Hello, this is Christine Fischer. Leading practice discovery in energy conservation is a goal that takes about 1/3 of our advocacy resources, generally falling into the simpler and lower cost category of our canon: safer, simpler, lower cost, longer lasting. We have estimated that the education industry, which includes K-12 schools, colleges, and universities, spend about $30 billion annually on energy. We explained how we arrived at that estimate last week using data from American School and University, from the National Center for Education Statistics, and our own understanding of what proportion of our balance sheets is energy spend. While we want to contribute to our industry's conservation goals and the drive toward the net zero campus with mastery of ANSI technical standards, we also ask the question, how much are we spending to save $30 billion?
Thanks very much, Christine. This is Mike Anthony, live from Calgary. I was at an IEEE conference. I'd like to see where we're at. This is the street level just below the Calgary Tower. I'm getting ready to get an airplane, and I did want to make this call interactive, so we're starting it just a little bit early. There's still time for people to call in for us to respond to some questions. I think I just heard another caller come in. Is that you, Mike?
Oh. Yeah, that's me.
Hey, how you doing? So, Mike's...
I just got on 5 minutes ago and saw that there was a meeting pushed up.
Oh, right, yeah, I've got to get a plane, and they're causing me to clear customs in Calgary, so I'm putting another 15 minutes in there. It was cushioned to make sure I can clear customs before I come back into the U.S. So that's what that's all about. So we're expecting, we don't usually get people from the outside the way we used to, but I think we'll still have time if we do get callers, interactive call. We can still qualify this as an interactive conference, even though nominally I'd like to stop at about, would be 2:15 your time. So
Hey, Mike, we lost your audio.
we have Drew in Ann Arbor. How's that, Drew? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, good. I accidentally hit my mute button. And then we have Christine and Drew in Ann Arbor and our man in LA. We continue to try to get a weekly sample of 30-minute updates, but they seem to defy all of the conventions of how video is being transmitted these days. So Mike and I will persist in that. Most of the videos out there you'll see are much shorter, or they have higher production. So we'll find a way, but I'm fairly happy with the guidance Mike has given us. So again, we apply this discipline of at least meeting once a week on the week to look over what we've done and to make sure that we're still sailing toward our goal. So with that, let's get rolling on here. We usually start out with numbers to steer by, and today I believe it was the unemployment report. I think that the equity markets are happy with lower unemployment, but of course that seems to be a mixed signal for the health of the labor market, because if you look to see how many people are actually working, the fraction, the numerator and denominator of that fraction are not saying good things about the labor participation. They say good things about the unemployment, but of course they're counting the participation rate differently. So we're seeing participation rate, fewer people are working. It's been, what, 1976, middle of a fairly pernicious recession that I recall. So this is not a good number. Let's just leave it at that. The focus subject for this week is the Energy Efficiency Act. It was signed into law on the 30th of April, roughly last week. And some of the numbers there, they claim that there'll be 136,000 new jobs created by the year 2025. I don't know what kind of jobs those are, whether they're inspectors, whether they are, they could be people doing window linings. You'll see a figure later on to see where it seems to have most of its physical impact. Of course, $13 billion a year in energy costs. Somebody said that was equivalent to the energy consumption of the state of Oklahoma. I think that was Mr. Portman, Mr. Porton, one of his staffers, is asserting that. So the other numbers, today another number comes out along with the unemployment report. The government tells us that the size of new commercial buildings in the United States continues to grow. I'm here in Calgary, and I have to say that there's not a lot of small stores like we used to see in the older inner cities. Even now, most of these are very large buildings, and this seems to square with what I'm seeing, and probably see that as well. And finally, here at the IEEE conference, we're all mindful of the fact that we're not seeing electrical road growth of any consequence, and yet we're seeing a lot of resources devoted to energy conservation, microgrid, smart grid, Internet of Everything, all which have a sort of there are a lot of political buzz around that. Meanwhile, I'll have to say that there are a lot of people in the industry that are looking at this number here and then seeing all the resources devoted to what appears to be speculative hype, and we're eager to turn this into reality. But a lot of us feel that if we do a few simple things well, we will clearly outstrip the goals of smart grid, nanogrid, microgrid, and Internet of Everything. So in any case, that's not our story here today. Principally, it is this document here, and Christine alluded to the fact that we ask a question, how much are we spending to save $30 billion? Now, when we say $30 billion, what we mean is that let's assume we've had the goal of we meet net zero, which most organizations aren't even close to. We'll ask the question, did we spend twice as much to get there? And this legislation seems to recognize that in this space, that in order to be effective and to use your resources wisely, you have to make sure that what you're installing is going to result in something that has some net gain over the long term and will have what we would call a simple payback. So it is remarkable that this is in here, and I don't have a lot of time to say other than to recognize that when we ask the question, how much are we spending to save $30 billion at net zero, it's always asking the question, and any reasonable resource allocator is entitled to ask, how much does it cost to save that much? So I think I actually brought out, this is the nitty-gritty. This is what sort of scares a lot of people. We actually look at this stuff, and I highlighted a couple areas here of interest, and one thing that is I thought of a particular of interest here was the high-performance energy efficiency measures that should be considered as part of the initial design and construction of separate spaces. So they've really cast a wide net with this one, with all the very complicated interplay of the teams that put together a new facility. And it looks to me like a study is involved, and usually that's a soft cost, but everybody has to bear that. So we'll have to see if there's going to be a standard for what the study should be, since we're in the standards business. Also here, a lot of this seemed to be directed toward commercial buildings. It originally seemed to be just the government's buildings, the buildings that General Services Administration was leasing. And so they have a Tenant Star program. I guess this must be a variation on the Energy Star program. But largely it was, hi there, Loren. Since I'm actually here, Loren can sit in on our Friday teleconference. Unfortunately, I don't have the audio here, but you can stop me as I speak. Loren Clark gave us a tour of the University of Calgary's powerhouse the other day. So it was very interesting. I'll be posting some of that on the E&H committee website. Loren, we're going through our this new legislation that was signed into effect. This federal legislation, what they're calling the Energy Competitiveness Act, or industrial. It's actually, the name is morphed around quite a bit during the debate of the Keystone Pipeline, but that's another political issue we'll try to get around. We can't talk too much about that. In any case, a lot of this too was inspired by the difficulty with, it's fair to say that there's a lot of energy waste involved in water heaters. Our arguments have been that there's a lot of waste already in the design. As you know, we were placing proposals in front of the International Plumbing Code committees to permit more performance language for designers rather than the prescriptive tabulations of what services and intermediate piping systems should be. And our inspiration came from the fact that so much of the showers and the toilets and the faucets were limiting the amount of water you get, and we were not able to convey the savings in water back into the tables of the International Plumbing Code. What that means for water heaters is that you will often have to spend a fair amount of energy getting hot water through a pipe that is maybe 8 to 12 times larger than it needs to be. So you're running an awful lot of water until you get hot water, just because the hot water pipe from the source of the hot water heater to the end use is so large. So in any case, that's what we've been in this space, but we weren't dealing it. We were dealing it from the design and installation and operation standpoint. This legislation seems to be targeted largely at the manufacturers. As I'm often fond of saying, that even though I defend the consensus code process, very often industries and markets don't move as fast as the federal agenda for energy transformation. So in other parts of this, again, we can't look at it line by line, but they get very specific. I think it's important that rated storage tank, this is a criteria here, which is important. And I bring this up also because many colleges and universities have many outlying buildings, houses. I know at the University of Michigan, we may have as many as 100 houses that we actually own. And also lease, but largely own. A lot of people bequeath their homes to colleges and universities right around the college and universities. They just give it to the universities. So here we are stuck with a large fleet of residential occupancies, and they will be subject of this legislation. I think I refrained from marking up that part of it. So energy information for commercial buildings. Remember, we talked last week or a couple of weeks ago about how some of this legislation gets very close to reaching into how you actually live in your house. These are privacy concerns that have raised. It's not part of our subject here today, but in any case, I thought I'd bring that out, that as you ask for information to inform your decisions, you're also revealing information about how you're actually behaving. So, and finally, there was another one here. I think I want to speed this along here just because in the interest of time. So I think you get the point. It is up on the website. It's not really that long. Well, look at here. We have Ted Snyder with us. How are you, Ted?
I'm fine, Michael. How are you?
Great. We're on I'm trying to catch an airplane. I just learned that I have to clear customs here in Calgary. But we are live from Calgary right now, from the IEEE conference, and I have next to me Loren from the University of Calgary. We actually have a camera up here, but it's not focused on us. So in any case, you can see the traffic just below the tower. I was just complaining about how many houses that are part of the university's square footage that's under their management will now be subject to this new Energy Conservation Act. And I know that you've often expressed an opinion about that. I know I might be hitting you hard here, but what are your thoughts about those residential buildings that we have on the perimeter, very often the perimeter of our campuses, that we're required to own and operate?
Do as much as you can to push the headache onto the occupants.
And there's your answer. Okay. Thanks for that, Ted. So, okay. So as we know, we whistle through this. There's many other things we have going. Are you able to see our screen, Ted?
I can see fine.
Okay, so we got down in the weeds from a few minutes ago, and I took a few bullet points here. You know how fond we are of bullet points. So I gave a little history of this. We're in the 114th Congress right now. As I've tried to indicate that whenever you have the federal government writing building codes, it seems to get perilously close to a violation of the National Technology Transfer and Advancement Act, which of course I don't think anybody's enforcing. I don't think anybody's taking anybody to court on this, but we do know our ethic is to try to drive as much leading practice discovery at the point of action or within industries. And I think arguments made by BOMA and others, despite of what the politicians say. The politicians will say we had 250 interest groups that supported this. What they didn't say is who dissented and what the nature of their dissent was. You never get to hear that. So I'm just letting you know what we know, because we're in the standards business, that when the federal government comes in and tries to preempt the private standard model code development processes, we need to be careful. We need to be respectful, but we need to remind them that is this really the way, the optimal way to achieve the goals we all share. I'm always careful to say that markets don't always have the answer either. Had we moved faster with the we elect these people and presumably they carry an agenda forward, but markets don't always. Markets may know everything, but markets may not be able to move at the speed that the federal government wants to, whether it's the Congress or whether it's the Friends of Congress or whether it's the White House. We have to be mindful that there is a good reason, and we have precedent in the way the EPA is accomplished, how we've cleaned up our lakes, how we've made cars safer, because the federal government just gave the market a little bit of a nudge. So I want to be respectful. As much as I try to defend the private standards process, we do know its limitations. Continuing with the history here, we know that this goes back quite a bit. It got caught up in the Keystone Pipeline debate. I don't know, frankly, where that's gone. I haven't heard much about it. For the moment, we don't have time to cover that, but that's where it got all stuck. So now we're left with what remains, and it looks like there's final action. It was placed into law 9 days ago, and it is important that understand that most of these specifics are meaningful to our agenda. But I think as it's administered, and I think that's might be where some of the details we're going to have to be mindful of. Who's going to administer it? DOE, GSA, state agencies. We just need to know that a lot of what's going on in the administrative part of it will probably affect us. Any questions? Loren, you're here. They can actually hear us. You want to? Any comments? The Canadian government often will follow suit. Anything? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to comment that I just very much agree with what you said about just university campuses and being gifted different residences and how we're impacted by the legislation changes and how that's often not recognized as part of the impact, but is very much so part of the impact. So I just want to agree with that comment, and thank you for that.
Right now, we know we can hear a rising debate and an ideal for the net zero campus. We had some discussion on that a couple of weeks ago. The Department of Energy has asked for that. So when we talk about net zero campus, remember, we may have as much as 20% of our fleet, or our square footage, in houses. Okay, that's all the time we have for. Here's some pictures about what it's all about. We all know that at least my work groups have tried to cut into this here. I think we've made some success here. I think that I'm going to claim that our work groups might have cut this by a third based on the things we've done in the NEC. We have more to go, though. So here's another. I mentioned earlier that there's lots of ornaments, Christmas tree ornaments on that legislation. There is a trade association for every part of this commercial building. There's the Efficient Chiller Association, there's the Improved Insulation Association, there's the Advanced Window Film Association, and there's the Daylighting Association. So suffice to say, they were probably all partisans for all that. What we didn't hear might be the other voices who are dissenting. again, here's another nice graphic that kind of gets to the point. Ted, before we got here, we were indicating some of the proposals put in front of IPC were proposals that were intended to do a little bit better in the design, to not oversize pipes, so that all the savings you get in the product itself weren't wasted because you're running your pipe so far that you don't, that it takes 10 minutes to get your hot water. Questions? Let's see if I just totally bored everybody. I guess we have 5 people on the call today. All right, fair enough. Well, that's nice, and you're still on. Okay, don't you love this stuff? Okay, so here is our, we like to have our moment here. What do we call this? This is our
cinematic moment.
Our cinematic moment. That's what it is. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to do, Loren, you don't know this, but I wanted to remind people that of the very nice trip we had, and we learned a lot about the University of Calgary's power system. So some of the outcomes here of the meetings, and you weren't in on all of these, Loren, but for the purpose of others, let's see, we're going to strengthen discovery. So these are some of the, we had a number of meetings here. So I'll just read them, and if there's any questions, the ICPS committee will strengthen its discovery leading practice in commercial power systems. And that is actually, it turns out that commercial power, the square footage in the education industry is largely falls under the building codes that govern commercial space. We're going to propose a suite, actually we've already done this. We've proposed a suite of standards to research this expertise in electrical energy efficiency. So we feel that NFPA, the fire folks, the heating and ventilation folks, the architects, and the building inspectors have really owned this space, and to some degree, if IEEE leading practice isn't in there, it's because there's been such a emphasis on industrial. Most of the expertise seems to have been focused on industrial. So now with a different kind of economy, we want to focus more on commercial systems. We'll put together a campus lighting standard. We talked a little bit about that maybe earlier in the week, or at least there's a blog post on that. I want my friends in Europe to know that I did recognize that Mr. Swan, I know this guy claims ownership of the lighting of the light bulb in America, but this gentleman here probably rightly deserves credit for the light bulb as well. It's just that he's not as widely known in the United States. So we should get to know both of these guys, especially my American friends. You get to know Swan. We're going to develop an equivalent white book standard. This gets into this is IEEE-ish, but our particular committee for many years has developed what's called the recommended practice for hospital healthcare facilities, and it dealt with power and telecommunications. So the white book concepts will be mapped onto the new 3000 series. We're going to approach, okay, so this is something new, and I use the word approach because we were talking a bit about what our manufacturers, some of whom are sponsoring these conferences, are putting in R&D. And there are voices that observe the increase in marketing and the decrease in R&D. I'll just leave that as it stands, because that could, there's all kinds of little explosions, and that opens onto a minefield of sensitivities where you, little bomblets will blow up at your feet. Let's see here. And finally, we will host, and right behind me actually is Giuseppe. Hello, or ciao. Right behind me, Giuseppe, we're going to do a little mini conference for just the E&H subcommittee in Rome in 2016. So we understand that a lot of clinical delivery is being done internationally. We've noticed that, for example, you can have your prostate operated on or your brain operated on by somebody in another country. So we felt that might be probably, it looks like they're doing okay right now, but we just want to make sure that we're in the space enough so that if something really bad happens, that we're a voice. Very often when there's a crisis, all the wrong people are invited to that meeting, and we want to make sure that IEEE is there to be able to bring its expertise to bear. So then that is pretty much the bulk of it. Any questions about that? That's our. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We have to go through the week's work. I'm sorry. So let's see what we have. This is what we did this week. Again, we do it in reverse order. So you'll see that we had what I think is a very good panel discussion with Mark Early, who is the senior engineer at electrical engineer at NFPA, as well as Casey Grant, who's the director of the Research Foundation. So there's some good news to report on both of these fronts, and it's mostly okay. It's mostly okay audio. We'll probably clean it up a bit, Mike, but I urge people to see it because this is fairly substantive accomplishments here that we've summarized this past week. What did we do earlier today? Obviously, we do a lot of casework in our buildings, so many people don't know that there are these other standards developers that develop the product standards for architectural woodwork. So that's what this one is all about. Let's see, energy assessment for pumping systems. Again, it looks like we got the federal government and private developers in the pumping standard space. This appears to be one that looks upon the whole power chain, whereas the federal legislation just seems to be the one that's trying to set standards for pumps, the product itself. Food safety management, always an important issue. We dealt with that. We're working with NSF International. We are looking for informed voices in our industry. We have a fair amount of this type of an occupancy in enterprise, so we need some more voices there. Another green building organization, and this is for largely the agricultural colleges and for the academic departments. Whenever I see the word sustainability, I'll usually spin that off to one of the academic departments. So let's see, I think that's it. Oh, was this Monday? So we dealt with air conditioning contractors. So that is the bulk of it. So that's what the week's work looked like. And let's see if we can close this out. Any questions, anyone? Drew?
Not offhand.
Okay, good. So it looks like I can get my plan. So anyway, I'd like to remind people that we're not throwing thunderbolts here. We just want to do a lot of simple things well, but at a very high rate. Somehow we got from the Model T to this car. That's me in there, and that's actually me there. And we got from there to there to there, and this is the Lunar Rover. This is actually Greenfield Village a few years ago. And as I get a little close here, I think we can do the same thing with cities. So you see small little improvements at a very high rate, inspired at the work point, conforming to our larger policy of safer, simpler, lower cost, longer lasting, will get us where we want to be. So with that, I hope everyone has, I just clapped my hands. I guess that's going to come across. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will see you on the Worldwide Inner Tubes.
All
That was
right.
quick.